Cool. Let's get going then. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this rather special webinar on behalf of myself and my colleague Paul Wagner from the Nordic Tourism Collective. We'd also like to thank our hosts today, the European Tourism Association, for giving us the platform to host this webinar. We've got quite an interesting session lined up here. We're going to be taking a look at the fabulous country of Georgia. And it's going to be quite an interesting session because we've got some lovely presentations to look at. We've got a very distinguished selection of speakers. So who have we got with us today, Paul?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name's Paul, and once again, on behalf of ETOA NTC, warm welcome to everybody this afternoon. Yes, we are still in these uncertain times, uncertain as to how quick things will be reopening up, but we feel we're getting closer and closer to that time where we're really going to start welcoming people into the air and into these countries very, very soon. And it's absolutely fabulous that we've got the chance to showcase one of the most interesting and fascinating destinations of Georgia. And we do have a fabulous panel with us today. First of all, we're delighted to welcome Andria Basilaia, the Deputy Mayor of Tbilisi. Welcome, Andria. Also, Nino, the Specialist of International Tourism Promotion at the Georgian National Tourism Administration. Welcome, Nino. And finally, we have Amiran Ivanidze, President of the Georgian Business Tourism Association. Good morning, good afternoon, Amiran.
Pleasure to be here, thank you.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a couple of presentations and we're going to hear about this fabulous country. I've actually seen the presentations and they're fantastic. This really is quite an interesting session, and I think Georgia is a country which everybody needs to know about. It's a country which everyone needs to hear a little bit more about. I think it's going to be one of the go-to destinations for the future. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. There is a chat session, or there's a questions sessions on the box on the GoToWebinar. If anyone has any questions of any shape or form or anything particular they want to ask, just pop the question into the question box and we will address them as we go along. So we'll be looking at presentations, then we're going to have some a little bit of discussion, and we probably will be done by 1:45 the hour or 10 to the hour at the very latest. So let's get going. So we'd like to set the mood first of all. We're going to show a short video provided to us by the Georgian National Tourism Association. Aaron, if you're there, roll it.
I want to tell you about Georgian greeting. Gamarjoba is hello, and Genatspale means literally my life for yours. Says a lot about Georgia, doesn't it?
Gather your gear, put on your backpack, walk into the wilderness.
This feels like a painting, or are we trimming?
Georgian hospitality is famous, and it starts when you just walk in any place.
On the one hand, you have snowy mountains and modern skyscrapers, and on the other side, relaxed fishermen looking for dinner.
Over 8,000 years of cultivating wine? Yeah, I'd say they know what they're doing.
Tell me, is there anything more you need?
Here, even rivers are falling in love.
Each corner of every street has its own secret.
I had high expectations, and they were exceeded.
All beautiful songs come to an end.
More than 7 million tourists shared their emotions about our country on social media. Using artificial intelligence, we've collected this valuable data into the first ever digital guidebook of the country. Find out what our guests feel about Georgia and generate your own personalized guidebook.
Thank you very much for that video. It just looks fantastic. It makes us all dream of traveling again. What a wonderful destination it looks. So I hope you all enjoyed having a little insight, little flavor of Georgia there on the video. And now I'm delighted to welcome Andria Basilaia, the Deputy Mayor of Tbilisi, who is going to share a few slides with us this morning about the wonderful city. Over to you, Andria.
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Paul and Andy, for the interest. I want to briefly thank the ETOA and the Nordic Tourism Collective for the interest in Tbilisi and in the country of Georgia. I'm going to try to start the presentation. Let me know if everything is okay. Tbilisi and Georgia have recently been under a major rise in terms of trendiness and in terms of just in general tourism numbers have been on the rise lately, and even already we see signs, post-COVID signs of recovery, which is very good. Tbilisi has really been on the radar lately, and as you can see, we have been quite active. We are working with international organizations, and we're voted as third place in the European Best Destinations of 2020. This is Europe is of course the biggest. It's one of the highest in terms of regional highest rises we have is from the European continent. We are also one of the safest destinations, and Tbilisi is continuously ranked as one of the safest cities in the region and worldwide. And recently we have been focusing on developing the Tbilisi Christmas market, and we have been quite visible on this area as well. We are also, as you can see from some of the testimonials, Tbilisi has been very trendy in various tourist groups, and it's quite evident if you look at the statistics of recent arrivals. Very briefly, Tbilisi tourism, what it is, roughly half of the tourists that enter the country end up visiting the Tbilisi at some point, and in 2019, before the COVID pandemic, we had over 4 million.
Okay.
International visitors. We are getting quite important revenue, and evident during the pandemic, and the impact on the economy of the city has been quite grave. So we are very actively now working to get back on track. Another thing I want to highlight here is the rise of the business and MICE tourism. And we'll have more detailed discussions about the role of MICE tourism in Tbilisi. In general, historically, Tbilisi has been a cultural melting pot. It's been on the crossroads of many trade routes. So there is not one thing that Tbilisi is known about. We are known for many different things, and I think this is one of the best things about Tbilisi in Georgia, is there's just so many different things you can do in such a short span, because it's a small country and everything is quite close. Of course, Georgian wine is, we are the cradle of wine, so to speak, and of course the dining experience is also one of the main areas of interest of tourism, and you have to visit and taste the cuisine yourself to realize why so many people come back just for this. Of course, Tbilisi has been on the map lately as a very trendy nightlife destination. We are quite often compared to Berlin in terms of nightclubs and nightlife. Of course, this has been heavily affected by COVID in the recent years, but now with the new regulations, we are quite certain that the nightlife will get back on track as well. Recently, we have been quite known for shopping, especially for the rise of Georgian designer concept shops and various destinations for such as flea markets and designer shops. Of course, Georgia is quite an old country, and Tbilisi is quite an ancient city with over 1,500 years of history. And so you cannot go by a block without running into some sort of monument or historical building. And it's a really a melting pot for the architecture, where you can see the ancient architecture as well as the Soviet period, and of course the modern architecture. So it's a very interesting mix that you encounter throughout the city. Of course, we're quite known, Georgia in general, for nature and leisure and hiking, and all throughout, very close to the city. There are many opportunities for hiking and nature activities. Traditionally, Georgia has been a source of sulfur baths. So spa and wellness has also been one of the areas that's been rapidly developing. We are quite focused on family travel as well, and we just, with the recent change, we've made it easier for families to travel post-COVID. And another new destination is sports. We're quite keen on hosting many new big international events, such as the Super Cup that we hosted in Tbilisi in 2015. As I mentioned, the MICE tourism has been on the rise in Tbilisi. Roughly half of the facilities in the country are focused in the city, and we're quite keen on hosting more and more MICE-related events. We have a visa-free regime with up to 100 countries, so it's quite easy to organize big international events, and the number of facilities is rising every year. What we do as a city, we are quite actively working with the local tourism sector and our international partners. We are quite actively organizing various trips for influencers and journalists. We are also have been working actively to organize various B2B workshops and forums to really connect our international partners with local stakeholders. We have been working very actively recently on the new content creation, and we have been closely working with the local businesses on human resource development, on various trainings related to health and service standards. We are also quite keen to promote Georgia internationally, and we have been quite active in terms of various ranks, guidebooks, and etc. We also have been very active recently, together with the National Tourism Board of Georgia, in various international exhibitions, and we have gotten very active, and we have become in recent year members of such networks such as the European Cities Marketing, European Best Destinations, of course, ETOA, and other international partners. And of course, at the end, I mentioned the COVID regulations. Currently, we are quite keen on getting the tourism back in the city and in the country. And Georgia was one of the first countries to introduce the no PCR entry for fully vaccinated travelers who are traveling by air. And we do require the PCR test by land and sea still. And we do allow non-vaccinated travelers to enter when they show the PCR test at the border. And the good thing is that we already see the signs of recovery. There've already been about half of the flights that have been restored, that were operating pre-COVID, and a few new airlines such as the Eurowings entering the market. So all in all, I would say that that Tbilisi and Georgia are very well positioned to rebound. Of course, it's a very global problem, and everybody's working in this direction. But I think of currently the regulations that are in place, all the safety measures, make it a very attractive destination for post-COVID travel. And we will, of course, be very actively working with our partners to help the sector recover and to bring back the numbers we had. So I think I'm going to stop with the presentation at this point, and of course I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, Andria, thank you very much. That's fantastic. If you could stop sharing your screen, that would be great. Brilliant. Andrea, thank you very much. I mean, I don't know where to start with that because there's obviously so much going on in Georgia, and particularly in Tbilisi. There's so many different things and so many different attractions. We just have one question, which I'll come to in a second. But you've got so many attractions and so many different things to offer. What market do you see as being the first to come back to Tbilisi? What's the first market you'd be expecting to welcome into the city? I'm not sure if he's frozen or not. I think I suspect he is. Maybe, Paul, we could move on and perhaps we could ask Nino if she could tell us a little bit more about the general situation in Georgia, which, although Tbilisi has half of the visitors, there's a whole lot more to talk about, I guess. And let's hear about it, Nino. Perhaps you'd like to share your presentation with us.
Of course. Can you see the presentation?
Yep.
Wonderful. So good afternoon once again, everybody. I'm Nino. I represent the National Tourism Administration of Georgia. Oops, just a second. My screen is a little bit fast. So I would like to, yeah. I'm just going to quickly start because I'm quite limited in time and I love to talk about my country. So it's well, these two contradict each other. I'm just going to briefly mention about the location of Georgia. As most of you probably know, Georgia is located south of the Caucasus Mountains and east from the Black Sea. And as you can see, the location is and has been historically quite strategic. Therefore, it has been an interest of like most of the civilizations during the history to conquer the country. So it has been a battlefield. But of course, all these civilizations, including the Silk Road even, that went through the country, they have left their influence on the country, and it's very well noticeable even in the culture or cuisine or architecture in Tbilisi and along the country. So I think that like historically all these elements are one of the ones that make Georgia so attractive and interesting. Well, I'm just gonna also say that Georgia is a very small country. It's approximately size of Austria, to give you an idea. But the interesting thing is that the country has over-dozen climate zones. So basically, when you travel from west to east, the climate changes every 40 minutes, and because of so many mountains and the sea air coming from the west, etc. So basically, together with the climate, obviously changes the vegetation and even the acidity in the wine. So in terms of diversity, Georgia is very, very interesting and exciting, let's say. These are the main reasons why you should travel to Georgia and why people are traveling to Georgia. And Georgia has become such an attractive and interesting destination during the past few decades, I would say. Of course, there is the wine and the unique culture and ancient history that I will briefly talk about during my presentation. But here I would like to say that the main top reason to travel to Georgia is the country's hospitality. We are historically very hospitable people. We love our guests. And we always say that we don't have tourists, we have guests, because that's how tourists are seen as each Georgian, as their own personal guest. And we consider guests to be sent from God. So that's why we really take care of the travelers that visit our country. And we're very keen to make them, help them have the time of their lives. Georgia is a year-round destination. That is also another very attractive and unique thing I would say about the country, starting from the skiing slopes to the Black Sea coast in the west. And of course, during the autumn and spring, we have the beautiful mountains and really delicious cuisine. Again, ancient and very interesting history, really interesting museums, etc. So whenever you come to Georgia, you will always find something very exciting to do. And it will always make your memories really wonderful. I would also briefly like to address that Georgia is a very safe destination to travel. Well, of course, now we also add the COVID safety to the list, but I will address these issues a little bit later in my presentation. The amount or the rating of bribe and corruption is very low in the country, and it's very friendly to international investors and also safe to travel. I'm not gonna talk a lot anymore about Tbilisi, this capital city of Georgia, because Andria did mention basically everything interesting and exciting about it during his presentation. I will just move on to Batumi. Batumi is a city at the Black Sea coast in the southwest of Georgia. It is also very interesting and quite attractive between tourists. But interesting thing about Batumi is that it is not only a beach destination, but it's also a very good entertainment hub. So there are a lot of festivals and music and theater festivals happening there. And also, if you don't want to spend all day in the city and at the beach, you have just 20 minutes to travel to beautiful subtropical forests and mountains. And you can also enjoy nature together with the city break. I will also talk about Kutaisi a little bit. Kutaisi is located in the middle of the country. Historically, it's the home of Kolkhis. Kolkhis, probably you have heard about the Argonauts. So that's where historically they are from. And also Kutaisi houses one of our 3 UNESCO heritage sites. And it makes, of course, the city culturally and historically more interesting. Briefly about Georgian culture, it's quite unique. If you have not experienced it, I would really suggest to search for it, at least in the internet, before you visit the country, of course. Georgian dances and polyphonic singing is very popular all over the world, and the polyphonic singing has been acknowledged as a masterpiece of the world's cultural heritage by UNESCO. Here are the 3 UNESCO sites that are located in Georgia. One of them I already talked about, Kutaisi. The other one, Tbilisi, is just 20 minutes away from Tbilisi. It's the ancient capital, and also Upper Svaneti, which is up in the Caucasus Mountains. And the region is not only culturally and naturally interesting, but also it houses one of our 4 ski resorts. So you can not only enjoy the culture in Svaneti, but also ski if you're the winter sport lover, right? Okay, so just a little bit about Georgian wine. Probably you have heard about it, but I'm just gonna say again, Georgia is known as the cradle of wine because we are the oldest nation so far discovered to be making wine. And the interesting fact about that is that we have our own tradition of making wine, which has been alive and non-stopped during 8,000 years. And we also, like, despite the small territory of the country, we have over 500 indigenous grape varieties. So you can guess at least how many wine varieties you can try when you travel to Georgia, right? Together with the wine, of course, comes a very, very delicious cuisine, which is very knowable for the Asian and also European taste buds, I would say, because it's kind of a mixture. It's very colorful and there are lots of herbs and vegetables with a lot of oriental spices. So it's really, really delicious. Highly recommend it if you have not tasted it yet. Because of all the mountains that we have in Georgia and rivers and lakes and the climate zones I talked about, we have all the adventure tourism possibilities that one can think of, I would say. Some of them are named here at the slide, and we are trying to push or like promote Georgia as an adventure, as a nature-friendly destination, especially now after COVID, because we know that people are more oriented to travel and to get closer to the nature and recreation. So that is one of the main points of our promotion post-COVID, let's say, of the country, to highlight the natural tourism or like to adventurous tourism possibilities for all the people wishing to come to Georgia. We also have multiple ski resorts along on the west coast. As you know, we are on the east side of the Black Sea. And I will briefly talk about ski resorts as well. The main one being Gudauri, which is only 1.5 hours traveling from the capital city, Tbilisi. So you can even do the day tours, let's say, up to the mountains and ski during the day and come back in the city. All Georgian resorts are very well equipped and quite popular. And also I would like to highlight that except the beautiful slopes that we have, you can experience heli skiing and powder skiing and all the not traditional, let's say, and more exciting skis varieties in Georgia. I would also briefly like to address the wellness and health resorts, because we have a lot of mineral springs and therefore a lot of mineral resorts. And I want to highlight here that Tbilisi is one of the spa resorts of Georgia because of the sulfur, naturally warm sulfur water and sulfur baths that we have in the capital. And it's very quite popular amongst the tourists. And Georgia has recently become a very, very interesting and exciting hub for entertainment and nightlife. And I would say it's not only Tbilisi, but also Batumi, for example, or other regions of the country. Because we were getting, and we hopefully will very soon get, very, very big interest from all over the world from tourists. Of course, the infrastructure tried to keep up, and a lot of accommodation units have been built. Interesting fact about that is that the accommodation units, they are not only concentrated in Tbilisi or in the main cities of the country, but they are being scattered all over the country. So wherever you go in Georgia, you will be able to choose different categories of hotels and accommodation units. And here are some of the hotels that have recently opened or are being built in the country. Of course, we should also address the MICE tourism opportunities. A few years ago, we have opened the conventional bureau, which is part of the tourism board. And that happened because we basically saw our advantages in the region, so that Georgia becomes the hub of MICE tourism. And all the venues that have been building or have already opened in the country are, of course, helping us with that. These are just the examples of two venues, very interesting venues that are in Georgia. One is a arena, like a Black Sea arena, located at the Black Sea coast. And another one is the biggest exposition center, which is located in Tbilisi, Expo Georgia. Quite big capacities and really, really long experience of hosting multiple events. We have 3 international airports in the country. Tbilisi, obviously, the capital is the one, and another one is Kutaisi, and the third one is located in Batumi. And you can see that also strategically they are very well located. So basically, if you arrive in Tbilisi, you can leave the country from Batumi and meanwhile just travel from the east to the west and see the most of the attractions of the country. These are the part of the flights that have been reinstated, but Andria also talked about it. I'm not going to stay on this page for long, but you can see that many, over half of the destinations are already accessible from and to Georgia. This slide just shows how close or how centered we are in from all over the world. I'm just going to say a little bit about our readiness in terms of COVID-19 regulations. During the last year, I would say our hotels got really big experience because we were having this project where the hotels were made into centers where people who arrived to Georgia, they could stay in quarantine. So they actually got not only the informational, but actual experience of how to deal with all the regulations. And of course, the transportation, cafes and restaurants and all the facilities accessible for tourists, they are in accordance to World Health Organization regulations and recommendations. A few words about another project that we're very proud of remotely from Georgia. We have this application where people who didn't need visa to come Georgia before COVID, they could just apply, and if they were able to work remotely, they could do it from Georgia. And obviously we wanted to create the digital nomad hub in Tbilisi and in the regions of the country, and it has been quite successful, and we have got quite interest from citizens all over the world. Entry regulations, as Andria already stated, we are now open to 64 countries that can enter with a PCR test, and if they are vaccinated, anyone basically can enter the country. I'm not going to stay long on this slide either. Georgia has, of course, been highlighted, and I hope some of you at least have seen some of the information about the country in world's leading magazines and publications. And it's not only about tourism or tourist destinations, but also Georgian fashion has been quite popular as well. So it has put us on the fashion map of the world, let's say, as an attractive destination. Thank you very much. I hope my presentation was interesting enough to leave you a little bit excited and interested to visit the country and experience it live.
Thank you, Nino. That was fantastic. Just a word to everybody watching. This session or this webinar is being recorded. So if anyone wants to dip into that presentation of either Nino or Andria's at their leisure, they will be able to do that. And if anyone actually wants a copy of the presentations, we'd be happy to send them. Just let us know. There's a question that we had on the chat, actually, Nino, which actually either you or Andria could answer, which is, when I suppose you've answered your own question. It says, when do you suggest is the best time of the month to travel in terms of climate for nature? I mean, you mentioned you had so many different time zones, so it's probably an impossible question to answer.
Yeah, I would just maybe repeat myself. We promote ourselves as a 4-season destination. If we're talking about traveling to Tbilisi, that would be the same, just because of the diversity of the city itself and what the city can offer, but also because of the very short distances to all the other destinations related to wine, for example, or skiing. So different seasonal activities, right? So to the mountains, to the hiking destinations, etc. Basically, anytime you come, you will be pretty happy to be wherever you are.
Cool. Thank you very much. We talked a bit about the MICE side of things. So Paul, do you want to pursue that a little bit?
Absolutely. This is a great time to introduce Amiran Ivanidze, who is the Georgian Business Tourism Association, the president there. And maybe you can just say a little bit, Amiran, about your organization and about the MICE potential to the region, to the country yourself. That'd be great. Over to you, Amiran.
So just a bit about the association. We were founded in 2019, and it was really something driven from the need from the private sector, seeing that they needed an entity that would unite them under one umbrella in the purpose to communicate with different entities such as the government, other private sector representatives, and to aid in addition to what the government was doing in promoting the country. So it was really something created by the private sector for the private sector, but again, to be there and help out the other players that are promoting the country. Now, in terms of MICE tourism for Georgia, it was something that really started maybe like in 2015, 14. There was a couple of companies that were actually working on this direction. Not a lot of people knew what MICE tourism was. It was something very new. People back then were calling it big groups of tourists coming that want to have some leisure fun and maybe like a meeting room or something. So they didn't have the understanding of what MICE tourism was. And back then, the Georgian National Tourism Administration created the Convention Exhibition Bureau. And the purpose of that was, one, to educate the local market on what MICE tourism is, to promote the country as a MICE destination, because we saw that there was a lot of, let's say, benefits that the country had. I mean, a lot of advantages compared to our neighboring countries and countries within the region that we were in terms, let's say, more advantageous, you know. And one of them was the safety. If you remember back in 2015, it was a pretty hectic time. You know, in Western Europe, there was a lot of, let's say, unsafe activities happening, right? While Georgia was being ranked as one of the safest countries in terms of security, tolerance, whatsoever, right? So this really helped us push and help promote the country as a very attractive MICE destination. So at that point, people were also tired of the same destinations that they were going to. Let's say in Europe, it would be Barcelona, Istanbul, Dubai. It was always the same, right? So they were looking for a change, and then came this little new player called Georgia that not a lot of people heard about. It was becoming a very attractive leisure destination. People were traveling for leisure purposes. And you know, a lot of the leisure tourists, they're also executives. So when they go back, they start talking about this beautiful country they visited. And the next time, you know, the board would meet and decide where to go on their either incentive to a trip or business meeting trip, right? They were like, why not try Georgia? And we obviously try to promote that as much as possible, meet with different players, invite them to the country, and it really shot off, you know. Up until the pandemic hit, Georgia was actually the leader in terms of the upcoming destinations for MICE. Obviously, we're not going to compete with such a big destination such as Istanbul, which for the past decade were top 10 destinations for MICE tourism. But in terms of, let's say, neighboring countries such as Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, at some extent, even though we had the small capability in terms of hosting a big number of people, we were also competing with such countries as the UAE. And in many, for example, award ceremonies, right? I remember the first one was in 2016, then in 2018, we actually beat them as the preferred destination for MICE tourism with some pretty big publications. And a lot of people were writing about Georgia. There was Business Traveler Middle East, Business Traveler Russia, even the British Business Traveler was writing about Georgia as one of the, let's say, upcoming destinations, and something definitely interesting to, for people to consider visiting. So again, this all really helped solidify not only the image of Georgia, but also it taught the companies working in this sphere that this is really something to concentrate on. I mean, the whole strategy of the Georgian tourism was to move away from the, let's say, mass tourism to quality tourism. Quality tourism meaning to higher spending tourists visiting, people staying for much longer. And MICE tourism is really one of the key factors for this. So we definitely did quite a lot in a very short period. Unfortunately, this pandemic really, let's say, slowed us down. But again, with all, let's say, bad things come good things later on. So this pandemic, especially for the companies, let's say, that are in the association, it really helped them to restructure, let's say, their companies, their strategies, start working on new markets. So it was a, let's say, good time out for, it was bad financially, but in terms of like strategy and rethinking on how to proceed further on, I think it might have been some kind of a benefit as well. But we'll see this probably later on, how this all plays out once everything goes back to normal. So that's a little short brief on my Georgia.
Fabulous. You know, obviously, it sounds to me that Georgia is blessed with being able to attract any type of segment, whether you're looking for MICE and business travel, if you're looking for sport, if you're looking for skiing, if you're looking for winter, looking for summer, or of course the amazing city break in Tbilisi and Batumi. So you really are blessed with a lot. But can I ask you another question related to this? And you know, one thing that's very much on everybody's mind and our audience as well today, and those listening to the recording, is what about sustainability in Tbilisi and in Georgia? You know, how is Tbilisi and Georgia well positioned now to offer a sustainable holiday as well in the future? Who would like to take a crack at that one first?
Well, when you talk about sustainability, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about the corporate responsibility and all that, or more greener to?
It's a mixture of everything. It's the diversity, it's the environmental one, it's the social one. It's all the components of sustainable travel, and I know it's something very important for Georgia as well.
Oh, definitely, 100%. And the great thing about it is that a lot of, I mean, from one side, the government is really, let's say, promoting sustainable tourism. It's something that we see that if we want this to, let's say, survive, and for us to actually really evolve in the tourism field, we need to be sustainable, right? Now, the other thing that's really great is the companies themselves, be it travel agencies, DMCs, or hotels, or other, let's say, players in the industry. They see that for them to be ahead of competition, for like the well-being of the country and so on, they have to be more, let's say, green, more sustainable. So I mean, there's always some initiatives, let's say in MICE tourism, right, specifically when you have like big delegations visiting, a lot of times they try to stay away from the use of, let's say, paper and so on, and to give back to the community somehow. And so they do all these small, let's say, steps to try to move their businesses into a more sustainable agenda.
Super. Great, thanks, Amiran. And another question's just come through, I've noticed, Andy, and how good is the internal train travel? I think this could be for Nino, in Georgia, or do you recommend traveling within Georgia by car, by hired car? Which is the best way of seeing the country?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you want to see, obviously. In terms of train traveling, we do have trains like 2 times a day from Tbilisi to Batumi, so from the capital to the very west of the country. But obviously, if you want to stop in between and like be the organizer or like of your own schedule, I would definitely recommend a car. And the 4x4 if you want to go up to the mountains and see like more beautiful and green places of the country. I would say, yeah, public transport is quite well developed. We also have like buses and small mini buses, etc., going to different destinations of the country. But yeah, it depends. I would say that it's best enjoyed by car, because then you have all the time and possibility to go off the beaten track, etc., right?
Can I ask a couple of practical questions then? I think this is fascinating. A few things. Number one, language. You guys have the craziest language I've ever seen. But what's the fluency of internationally spoken languages? If I go to Tbilisi as a FIT individual traveler, and I find myself somewhere in the middle of the country, am I going to get stuck? Am I going to have difficulty getting around, or what's the issue there? How's it filtered down, basically?
I'll tell you a great story about that. Like, for example, in Tbilisi, everybody speaks English. In BATUMI, everyone speaks. I mean, most major cities, and the younger generation, they all speak English. But the beauty about Georgia, right? And I always love telling the story when I get the question like this, right? So back in the 90s, I don't know, it was like early 90s, right? And to give you an idea, back then, Georgia was completely different, right? So the roads were not so good, the light was not everywhere, so it was a very different country. There was a German traveler, right? He used to travel the world on a motorcycle, and they still do, by the way. It's very Georgia's on a let's say very popular road for these international travelers. So this guy, right? He was somewhere in the mountains in Svaneti, yeah, and his bike broke down. Now the tourist, right? He was German. He only spoke German. And back then, nobody spoke English here, and they're somewhere in the mountains, right? They only speak Georgian and their dialect, so they have no way to communicate. Somehow, okay, I mean, this guy was trying to fix his bike. The villagers saw him, they came, and they somehow interacted, right? Obviously, they didn't understand each other verbally, but somehow with expressions and so on, they understood each other. They took this guy in, they fed them, they fixed his bike, and now every year, imagine, he comes back to the same family. He's already part of the family. He's the godfather of some of the kids and so on. So what I meant by this was that when there's somebody in need or something, no, it doesn't matter if they speak English, German, Georgian, whatever. Georgians understand the guests, right? As Nino mentioned earlier, for us, a guest is a gift from God, and we take that very personally. So listen, there's not going to be any issues with language barriers. Even if they don't understand the language, they'll communicate with you.
Fantastic. I suspected that would be the answer, but I mean, as Nino said, you know, the hospitality of the country is unique. Two more practical questions I'd just like to ask. I'm sorry, Paul, this is off the script. One is visas. Do I need a visa to travel to Georgia from Europe, from whatever? So what's the situation with that? And just to clarify the post-COVID traveling, so if I've been double jabbed, which I am, I can travel to Georgia with no quarantine and no requirement to take a PCR test. Is that correct?
Yes. So let's start with the visas. So the citizens of European Union and over 100 countries, they do not need a visa to come to Georgia. So for those countries, whoever is vaccinated, they can just come without anything by air or by plane, just with some kind of paper stating that you have got 2 shots of vaccine. If you're traveling by land or by sea, you will also need a PCR test together with the vaccination passport or paper, we call it, right? And if you're not vaccinated, then there is a list of 64 countries, which is also on our website, that are open to come with a PCR test no older than 72 hours. And they are also required to do another PCR test on the 3rd day of arrival in Georgia. That's it.
Okay, cool. Paul, do you have anything?
No, I think maybe a couple more questions is, it sounds to me, I was going to put this on to Andria, it sounds to me that Tbilisi in Georgia is in pretty good position to welcome people back. I think I saw all the new hotel openings in Tbilisi is crazy. So infrastructure sounds very much ready. Are we talking about you're ready now? I mean, the vaccinations allowing in Europe are getting better and better. We can start traveling now. Are you ready and raring to go, Andrew? Is that the case?
Yes, definitely. We are ready to receive the tourists. As already mentioned, it's quite easy to come into the city. Almost everything is back to normal. All the cafes are open, all the hotels, as you mentioned, and we even had, it's a very good sign, new hotels opening the post-COVID period, which is, of course, a very good sign. We are hoping, along with the new air travel getting back to normal, so we really hope to have the summer something close that we had to 2019, where we had the record number of travelers. So we're definitely waiting for our international friends, and if you haven't traveled to Tbilisi, I think it will be an unbelievable summer if you come here and explore Tbilisi and Georgia.
Sounds great to me, and honestly, just by I'm sure I'm speaking for our audience and those that will be listening to the recording. I think the passion that you guys are all talking with about the destination is that you really love the tourists to come. It's been a big hit, of course, during COVID, when there's been a pause in visitors coming in. But we could see the huge numbers that Georgia and Tbilisi was attracting prior to COVID, and now with the readiness that you have now, the future is really interesting. And just to say that this is actually the first part of events with Georgia. We're delighted to be hosting on the 21st of September a rendezvous Georgia, where those operators, tour operators from around Europe, will have the chance to meet the suppliers face to face. We'll have up to 30 of the key suppliers in Georgia ready and raring to talk business cooperation and business on the 21st of September, and we'll be sending to all the listeners and the audience all the details of Rendezvous Georgia after the event. Andy, any last minute questions before we wrap up?
The question coming in from Germany, I believe. Are there any fan trips planned? And I guess the answer is probably yes, when that's possible. Nino, I guess that's a part of the strategy.
Definitely possible, especially if the question is coming from Germany. Germany is one of our target markets, and we would be delighted to discuss it further. I would not say the exact dates right now, obviously, but everything is possible.
Okay, well, lovely. Thank you very much. Well, listen, do you want to wrap up, Paul, and thank everybody?
Well, yeah, I'd like to thank our three guests, Andria, Nino, and Amiran, for their wisdom of words and for whetting all our appetites about what unbelievable destination this is. And I think everybody watching this, having the pleasure to watch it now or during the recording, will suddenly think this is a destination that we really, one, have to go to ourselves, two, bring our customers to as well. So thank you so much, every one of you, for joining us today. Best of luck welcoming back the tourists very soon indeed. We do believe summer and September onwards, things will be opening up as the vaccines ramp up dramatically in Europe. So fingers crossed, a very quick and safe return of tourists to your destination. And thank you all once again. Thank you once again to ETOA as well for hosting our partners
thank you very much
today. And we hope to see you all again very soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you.